All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get started, but I'll keep an eye on this chat. So, hope your new, I would say semester, but session is going well.
It is. I'm back in Miss Carlin's English 112 class this time. I had her for 111 before.
Nice.
So yeah, she's really fun as a teacher or a
Mm-hmm.
professor. Um, but I'm also in pre-calculus trig along with it. So
Oh, okay. Hopefully English is a nice like break or a nice cushion because those don't sound fun. All right, let's see. It was funny. Stephen Durr came by the other day and was like, "Yeah, I'm trying to get my students to attend these sessions. I only had 2 that went last semester," and I'm like, "It's probably Roger and I think probably another girl like Kayla maybe." But yeah.
I think that Destiny girl that was in our music class was there. Yeah.
Okay, I recognize that name, Destiny Co. I remember recording that a lot. Yep. He was like, "Yep, only 2 of them went, and they didn't even need the extra credit." All right, so today is just kind of a part 2 of what went down 2 weeks ago. French Monuments Part 2, and I tried to do more outside of Paris, even though I threw in a couple more in Paris because I kind of had to. All right, so word of the day, chateau. We kind of use this in English too, but it just means castle. That's all it is, chateau. I see it a lot on like wine bottles and stuff like that. And sometimes if you see a little X at the end of it, that's just the plural version of chateau. It's no different. It's just castles. But yeah. All right. So the first one I have is the Notre Dame. And the name itself, it means Our Lady. Notre is our. Dame is like lady or woman. Let's see. I gotta move a little grid here so I can read. So its construction took almost 200 years. I thought that was crazy. I guess I don't doubt it because it's huge. If you see in the picture, kind of the comparison between people and how high it is, I guess I can understand why it took 200 years.
And the detail. A lot of the stone on that has a lot of detail. They had to do that with hammer and chisel. So, like to sit there and chisel out each stone and make sure it was right for the position it's going to be on the church.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I guess this is way back in the day, 1100, 1300s. I
Is
guess
this
that makes
is
sense.
this where is this where the university gets its name from?
Mm-hmm. Where the university gets its name and also the Hunchback of Notre Dame. Both of those are from this church. So another fun fact, after the French Revolution in 1791, most bells were taken down from Notre Dame and melted to make cannonballs. I thought that was an interesting use of resources. But new bells, were later replaced and installed. But not so much later on, which I thought was kind of weird. And so it's one of the most visited places in France, in Europe. More than 13 million visitors enter Notre Dame every year. And when I've been here twice, I've never gone inside because the line is so long to get in, even though it's free. So most people kind of just hang out in this huge square area and just kind of take pictures in front of it because the front frame of it is kind of the most iconic part, even though the sides of it are really cool too. And there's like gargoyles and everything on the sides. So I have 2 videos here kind of breaking down the architecture. And the second video is kind of like a news report of how the building was burned down. Not all the way burned down, but a lot of it was destroyed in a fire. I think was it last year or 2 years ago? So here's this first one. So just a heads up because it kind of touches on the fire in the beginning of this video.
This is what's left of the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris after a massive fire tore through the iconic building. Dating back to 1163, the Notre Dame de Paris is considered one of the finest examples of French Gothic architecture. The building is 130 meters long, 48 meters wide, and 91 meters high. Each part of the cathedral tells a different story. Let's begin with the spire, which sadly collapsed during the fire. It was first built in the 12th century and recreated in the 19th century. If you take a closer look, you'll spot a tiny rooster perched at the very top. In 1935, 3 relics were placed inside the metal bird to protect the parishioners inside. Next, the western facade, likely the most known image of the cathedral. The first tower was built in 1200, followed by the second in 1250. The Gallery of the Virgin, a large rose, sits in the middle of the facade. Inside the structure, the rose creates a halo for a statue of the Virgin Mary. Under the balustrade extends the Gallery of Kings, representing 28 generations of the kings of Judah. Here we have the bell tower. Since 1856, 4 major bells in the northern towers of the Notre Dame have rung every 15 minutes without skipping a beat. Each bell is named after a different French saint. These are the famed rose windows, which date back to the 12th century. The south rose, the high windows of nave, and the windows of the cloister. All 3 rose windows survived the blaze. And finally, the gargoyles of Notre Dame. One of the cathedral's most popular features were carved in the 19th century. They project rainwater away from the building, but have also become known as the protectors of Notre Dame. For more updates on the fire at the Notre Dame Cathedral, visit globalnews.ca.
So I just want to throw that in there as just like a architecture kind of layout point of view, and a little bit of history to it. But yeah, like you were saying, the details, and there is this one shot, I think this one, I was looking at these little arches here of like just the details right there. Oh my gosh. And like all these statues just kind of all around the building. Yeah, I don't doubt how long it took to build all of that. Let's see. So this next one is all about the fire. I think 2019 is when it happened.
Welcome to CBS This Morning. We're talking about one of the great symbols of Paris and all of Western civilization. It is still standing this morning after a fire that nearly destroyed it. Flames brought down the spire and much of the roof at Notre Dame Cathedral yesterday. And think about this, it's the start of Holy Week. This morning, the fire is out, and prayers and offers of help are coming in from all around the world.
The cathedral's main altar is covered in debris right now, but much of the historic interior appears to be okay, and that's great news. The fire started during a major renovation project. Seth Doan is outside Notre Dame right now in the heart of Paris, a familiar sight to millions of Americans. Seth, this is tough. Good morning.
Good morning. The Paris prosecutor is saying that they are working under the belief that this fire was started by an accident, and there are around 50 people working on the investigation. Paris today is stunned, is heartbroken, and newspaper writers have been trying to put those emotions into words. This headline reads, "Tears." This one reads, "Disaster." As vicious flames engulfed the 850-year-old masterpiece of Gothic architecture, France's president said a part of us is burning.
Like, I saw a lot of people crying on the streets, and it's all because it's the symbol of France, it's the symbol of generations.
The fire broke out in the attic around 6:50 local time, about 5 minutes after Notre Dame closed for the day. It spread to the roof at the rear of the cathedral. In less than an hour, flames spread to its giant spire, which just 13 minutes later collapsed. 400 firefighters battled, but at times appeared dwarfed by the fire, which tore through the soaring structure, fueled by the wood of 1,300 oak trees that made up part of an interior network of wooden beams. Dropping heavy water from the air was not an option for fear it had caused the entire structure to collapse. 2/3 of the roof was ravaged, but medieval stonemasons may have saved Notre Dame by doing such a good job on the buttresses that survived the fire. There was a rush to save artwork and artifacts. Paris's mayor said the Holy Crown of Thorns and other precious pieces had been successfully recovered. Today, we're getting our first look inside, where the cross on the altar appears to shine amid the devastation. Stone saints look toward firefighters, and some pews survived. Attention is now turned to the stained glass windows and the organ, one of the oldest in the world. Notre Dame had become one of the most popular sites in Paris, attracting about 30,000 visitors a day, around 13 million a year. During the fire, onlookers crowded onto bridges and streets, watching in horror. Powerless, some prayed or broke into song. The French president was defiant. The worst has been avoided, he said, adding, "We will rebuild."
Other presidents, a pope, and people around the world have been paying tribute and also making pledges to help rebuild Notre Dame, already in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Gail?
Seth Doan outside Notre Dame, we thank you.
Yeah, so it's pretty sad footage to see. I did want to pause in a couple of points. So just as a reference, this was kind of a good layout. All of these landmarks are pretty close in the heart of Paris: the Eiffel Tower, Arc de Triomphe, and the Notre Dame, and then a couple more scattered around. So they're all pretty close. You can walk, you can take the metro to them. The other point I wanted to show was the kind of that glowing cross. It was super viral. Here we go. There was a photographer that came and took a shot of like all the rubbish and then this glowing cross, and it was just like a huge like symbolic picture that just was going around during that time. And yeah, so it's pretty sad. I don't really know how it looks to this day, but I assume it looks a lot better than that. So pretty sad. All right.
Welcome to see.
Next one, Sacré-Cœur. This is also in Paris, but not as close as like the other monuments and attractions. This one is in a district called Montmartre, and that's, I think I've talked about this one time. It's kind of like the artistic area of Paris, because Paris is kind of divided into these different little neighborhoods or different regions. So this is kind of like the most popular site in Montmartre, and it's kind of higher up on a hill and like an elevation. So Sacré-Cœur is a reference to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, and that's what it literally translates to. Sacré, sacred, cœur is heart. French architect Paul Abadie built the best basilica between 1875 and 1914 in Romanesque Byzantine style. This, whenever I look at it, it kind of reminds me of like a mosque almost, just with the domes. So I think it's pretty cool, kind of different than a lot of the other churches and cathedrals around France. More than 11.5 million visitors each year. It is France's second most visited church after Notre Dame. The top of Sacré-Cœur is the second highest point in Paris. The Eiffel Tower is the highest point. This is only because of, well, it is a really tall building and really high up, but it's because of the elevation of where it's located is why it's so high up. But yeah, this is kind of pretty much what it looks like. It's very touristic, lots of people, and there's lots of steps to get into it, and lots of greenery and grass to sit on, and you can go inside for free in there too. So, all right, there weren't a lot of good videos on Sacré-Cœur. I don't know why, but I kind of like this point of this lady who talking about how white it is and how like distinctly white the Sacré-Cœur is.
Just a few more steps to go. Come on. We made it finally. And waiting for us is the splendid view of Paris. Despised by most intellectuals of the time, the Sacré-Cœur was built at the end of the 19th century. Sacré-Cœur is actually built of a special kind of white stone that when it rains, it actually produces this kind of white liquid, making the building look even whiter. Many people think that the dome on top of Sacré-Cœur actually reminds them of the most perfectly iced wedding cake. This Byzantine-style church is by far the absolute postcard bestseller you're going to be able to find in Paris. Well, it's hard to imagine a more romantic place. This is Guénole showing you Paris.
Yeah, that's it. It's kind of a short video, but it just kind of gives you a feel for how it is. I skipped the first 30 seconds because it's kind of just her walking up the hill to it. But there is a little, like a train that I think she shows right here.
By these stairs here, or there's also a little funicular train. But today we're going to take the stairs.
So yeah, that's all that happens in the first 30 seconds. But yeah, I think it's a pretty interesting one, and it's a very famous one too, Sacré-Cœur. Yeah, any thoughts or comments on these first couple ones, first two? They're both very different.
I would like to know how long the rebuild would take on the Notre Dame now, because I mean, compared to the time it took to build that, the reconstruction, I'd like to see the difference in time.
Yeah, that's very true. And if they could keep as much of the like original form as they could, I do wonder.
Yeah.
I remember when this first happened, and there was all these millionaires donating all this money, like here, it needs to go to like reconstruction, and then there was all this controversy, like why can't you donate this money to like pollution or like something else? But I mean, millionaires can do whatever they want to with their money. But yeah, I know it took a lot of money to get it started to reconstruction. So yeah, maybe I'll look that up at the end if we have time, kind of the update. All right, next one.
Just a few more.
No. All right, finally, not one in Paris. This is the Palais du Pape, and this transitive palais is Palace of Popes. Pape. So construction began in 1335 and only took 20 years to complete. And it's huge. So I guess when it says only took 20 years, it is surprising how compared to like the Notre Dame, it's the largest Gothic palace in Europe. It has 650,000 visitors per year, and it is included in the top 10 most visited attractions in France, which I feel like we're going to hit all 10 by the end of today. And it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site as of 1995. There's a lot of history to this one. It's really interesting, kind of the Pope background and the more Catholic history to this one. I think this video I have. There we go. And it's huge. It's really cool. There we go.
Welcome to the Global Student Entrepreneur Awards.
This is about who is the wildest planet in the next.
Located on the sunny south of France, picturesque Avignon was once the seat of power for the Catholic Church. The historic center of Avignon is known for its architectural and cultural significance, both of which largely stem from its brief stint as the seat of the papacy. Avignon's role as residence of the popes was relatively short-lived. The Avignon papacy, or Babylonian captivity as some dubbed it, was controversial within the church and lasted only from 1309 to 1377, but it left behind a lasting imprint on the city. Beginning in 1335, a magnificent palace was constructed to house the popes. Completed in less than 20 years in 2 phases, the Palais du Pape is the largest Gothic palace in Europe. The palace also holds a collection of intricate frescoes by the Italian master Matteo Giovannetti. 7 popes occupied the palace before the papacy moved back to Rome in 1377. But the palace in Avignon remained property of the papacy until the French Revolution, when it was seized by revolutionaries. It was later converted into military barracks and a prison under Napoleon. Today, the property is preserved as a museum, and visitors can stroll through its halls and gander at the former private chambers of the Pope. The palace is surrounded by other monuments, including the Cathedral of Notre-Dame, which was built in 1150. Nearby is the Petit Palais. It was once the residence of bishops and now houses an art museum with an extensive collection of works from the Middle Ages and Renaissance. A short stroll from the cathedral is Rocher des Doms, a park with panoramic views of the Rhône. And adjacent to the complex is the remnants of the Saint Benezet Bridge, which once spanned the Rhône. Today, only 4 of the original 22 arches remain, but the construction is solid enough that tourists can still stroll along the span. Luckily, getting to Avignon is quite easy, and a well-developed tourism infrastructure makes travel simple. The best way to avoid the crowds is to visit in the spring or fall.
So this one, to be honest, doesn't excite me or interest me historically and like architecturally as the other monuments. But I mean, I think it's still cool that it's one of the top 10 most visited places in Europe or in France, and it's more in the south of France.
And if you look at it, the construction on this was in the mid 1300s, and the construction on the Notre Dame was the mid 1100s. So they had 200 years to advance in, building and construction. So I think that could do a lot with the 20 years compared to 200.
Yeah, very true. I think, the Notre Dame was finished by the 1300s, and I guess they just had started in the 1300s for this one. I thought it was also interesting. I'm sure it's because it's been renovated, but how with the palace for this one, it's like the palace, and then there's buildings like right next to it that aren't even part of the palace. I assumed back in the day they had a lot more land surrounding the palace. Where was the shot? Yeah, I guess around here, because then there's just like, other residential buildings or other businesses that are just like right next to it. And I always assume a palace has all this kind of like spread out space before it. But yeah. Let's see if there's anything else. No, not really. All right, cool. I think I have 2 more. All right, so this is another one, not in Paris, thankfully. This is the Pont du Gard, and it's a bridge. It's actually, one bridge altogether. Following Roman architecture, it's kind of more towards the side of Italy, so that kind of makes sense of why it's more Roman origins. Its primary purpose was to supply water, and then its secondary use was to serve as a toll bridge. It's the highest Roman aqueduct bridge, has 3 different levels. There's one here at the base, one here, and then one at the top. And it is today one of France's top 5 tourist attractions, with 1.4 million visitors reported in 2001, which is surprising that it's top 5 tourist attractions. I don't know if that means top 5 out of Paris or just top 5 in general. I think that's really cool. Again, in the south, I forget which city. It might be, I'm not going to guess because I'm going to get it wrong, but I have a video that'll probably say what it is. Yeah, here we go.
With important sites, Provençal life feels rooted in its countryside, small towns, and vibrant markets. Its famous fields of lavender and sunflowers inspire painters. Its howling mistral wind can, as they say, blow the ears off a donkey.
this is like a great image and a great shot of like a very common, very traditional French markets. Usually
I
the
watch I watch a lot of Rick Steve stuff, and he does get really good footage on stuff.
Oh, really? Oh, cool. He seemed like he was very comfortable and that he's done a lot of these before, so that doesn't surprise me, I guess. Cool. Well, here, I'm glad you recognize him. So yeah, I like how he did this intro in this area. Pretty much in every single city, there's going to be markets all the time, usually always on Sundays, and then maybe on a random day during the week, like on a Wednesday. But Sundays are very popular to do this. And you always have to like bring your own bag or pay extra for like a little bag. And then they weigh it and then you pay by how much it weighs. I guess when you were mentioning that he does a lot of videos like this, I remember thinking, watching this intro, I was like, wow, he's like talking right in the middle of a public area and like people are walking by and he just doesn't care at all. And I was like, I would never be confident enough to do that. But yeah, all right, here we go.
And its coveted Côte d'Aron wines showcase this region's confident mastery of good living. And around here, good living is never far from nature. Where else can you canoe through such charming scenery and then under a nearly 2,000-year-old aqueduct? This region's evocative Roman ruins make history part of the picnic. The Pont du Gard reminds us that throughout the ancient world, aqueducts were stone flags heralding the greatness of Rome. They still proclaim the wonders of that age. This perfectly preserved Roman bridge supported a canal or aqueduct on the very top. It was a critical link, helping keep a steady river of water flowing cross-country to Nîmes, one of the Roman Empire's largest cities. Remarkably, the water dropped only 1 inch for every 350 feet. Let's go inside. This is what Roman aqueducts were all about. This is part of a 30-mile-long channel. A man-made river flowed through this for 400 years. You can still see the original stones, a thin layer of mortar that waterproofed the channel, and after centuries of use, a thick mineral buildup. The Pont du Gard's main arch is the largest the Romans ever built, 80 feet across. The bridge itself has no mortar, just ingeniously stacked stones. Taking full advantage of the round arch the Romans invented, it's made strong by gravity. The Pont du Gard Museum shows that a steady supply of water was an essential part of the Roman art of living. You'll see some very old plumbing, walk through a rock quarry, and learn how they moved those huge blocks into place and constructed those massive arches. All this work was designed to bring water into the still grand Roman city of Nîmes. The water finally gushed out here, into this modest-looking distribution tank from where it served the thirsty city's needs. Imagine the jubilation on that day in AD 50 when suddenly the system was operational. This is the very end of the aqueduct, and water would tumble out of this hole and fill this pool. Now, the system was designed to prioritize according to how much water was available. If the water level was high, these holes would send water to the homes of the wealthy, to decorative fountains, and to public baths. But if the water level was very low, well, these holes would still send water to the essential neighborhood wells. Today, the town's many Roman ruins testify to Nîmes' former importance. The Maison Carrée rivals Rome's Pantheon as the most complete building surviving from the Roman Empire. The temple survived in...
I think he talks about Nîmes after that. But yeah, it looks massive and it looks kind of like a nice, peaceful place, which is pretty cool. And I like the layers of it. I don't know if you can go on the top ones, but whenever I look it up, you always see people on that bottom third layer there. But yeah.
So if you look at it, France actually provided water for Rome.
True, very true.
I wonder if they taxed for that.
I don't know. Maybe And I wonder if the people who built it were a Roman, or like if they had a say or a help in constructing it, so that they can, you know, benefit from it as well. So it is interesting for sure. Random fun fact, this city Nîmes, N-I-M-E-S, is actually where the word denim comes from. So D-E in French means like of or from. So it was from Nîmes, denim, because I think the person or the construction of jeans was a guy in France, or Nîmes. So yeah, so that's where that name comes from, denim. All right, and I think I have one more big one.
Well, in cities are...
I'm gonna look more of his up now. I'm gonna see if he does any more ones in France, because I liked his video. Oh, last thing, when I was looking at videos, I saw that it was a thing that people kind of jumped off the bridge into the water. So here's just this random clip of that.
Wait, hold on. Y'all be careful. Okay, I've got someone here. Oh my God!
Attends, ils reviennent, on l'a deux.
So yeah, that's it. It kind of gave me a feeling of how high it is from the water, for sure. And then I was reading the comments underneath this video, and it's like, yeah, I tried this one year and then I got arrested. It's very much illegal. And so yeah.
I'm sure they wouldn't let them do it until the water's at a certain level anyway. But
Yes.
yeah.
I would hope so. Very true. It did look like in the other video there were parts that looked pretty shallow and pretty rocky. But then you also saw people in like a canoe. So hopefully it gets at a high level for that. All right. So last one I have today is Versailles, Chateau de Versailles is the full name. It was built in 1624, so, you know, a couple hundred years after the other Paris ones we talked about. So this is like in Paris, but not in like the heart of Paris. You have to go like an hour outside to get to here. So I wouldn't put this on the list of things you can all hit in one day. If you're in Paris, this is, you kind of have to have a separate day trip to get to this one. So if that kind of puts into perspective where it's at. So part of the chateau has a hall of mirrors, and it has a total of 357 mirrors. Everything used to construct and decorate the palace was created in France. I thought that was pretty crazy considering how large it is that they didn't go to outside resources. And a historical point was that the treaty that ended World War I, the Treaty of Versailles, that's where the name comes from. It was signed in the depths of the Hall of Mirrors, which is probably the most famous part of Versailles. I've never been here, but it always looks crazy cool, especially the gardens, the huge gardens out here. And then I think I have one or two videos on this one. Let's see. Yep, this one, I like all these construction videos to see how it's built and what goes where. So that's what this one is.
Versailles wasn't built in a day. It all began in 1629, when King Louis XIII had a hunting lodge built, replaced sometime later by a stone and brick chateau. King Louis XIV inherited this small chateau. In 1666, the sovereign embarked on major building work. Over 50 years, he continued to extend and transform what became Europe's largest chateau, the Palace of Versailles. Architect Louis Deveau designed two symmetrical grand apartments for the king and the queen. Louis XIV moved his government and court to Versailles. After a new program of works, Jules Hardouin Mansart replaced the terrace overlooking the grounds by the Hall of Mirrors, which became the court's main ceremonial reception room. Mansart further extended the palace to accommodate the royal family, the court, and all the government departments. With the servants, the kitchen, and stable staff, close to 10,000 people were bustling about the palace. At the end of his reign, Louis XIV moved his bedchamber to the center of the palace. This room was the hub of the king's daily ceremonial routine and that of all the Versailles courtiers. Towering over the other buildings, a royal chapel was finally built by Mansart on the same scale as the palace. When King Louis XV moved to Versailles, he broke with strict court etiquette and fitted out smaller apartments for more comfort and privacy. At the end of his reign, Louis XV built what the palace was missing, a real opera house. Architect Gabriel modernized the facades closest to the town. In 1789, the French Revolution forced the royal family to leave Versailles for Paris. The future of the palace looked uncertain.
At the end of it? Oh, no. Anyways, I think it's just when you see it in that view of how many rooms there are, I don't know what you would just do with all of that space and all those rooms. And it kind of reminded me of the video we watched of the Louvre, kind of how it started out as like this little palace for the king, and then it just kind of expanded and expanded and expanded. And it's crazy. I do wonder how big it is in relation to the Biltmore, if you've ever been. I don't know what's dubbed the biggest in the world, but they're both massive. All right, this other video I have. Oh, you have something to say or a comment?
I've been to the Biltmore, and it actually inside seems smaller, like than what the original start of that was. So.
I do agree. I've been to the Biltmore once a long time ago, and I don't know if it's because like the ceilings weren't as high. It felt smaller than I would expect it to be. All right, so this last one, it's kind of more like facts, kind of like all the breakdowns of like the mirrors and all that stuff like that. So I thought this was cool the way it was displayed as well.
Everyone has seen the Palace of Versailles in pictures, but have you ever considered Versailles in figures? Let's start with a little history. In 1623, in the town of Versailles, the palace of the same name was no more than a simple hunting lodge. In 1661, Louis XIV began building the palace we know today. At the height of the works, there were nearly 36,000 people involved in the construction of the royal residence. At the time, 4,000 courtiers lived in the palace and 2,740 in the outbuildings, amounting to nearly 7,000 people in total. From the laying of the foundations of the hunting lodge until the end of the French monarchy, 4 kings lived within its walls: Louis XIII, Louis XIV, Louis XV, and Louis XVI. Of the four, Louis XIV holds the record for the longest reign with 72 years on the throne. Mary Lesinska, the wife of Louis XV, holds the record for the longest female reign with 42 years and 9 months. And now for the main subject. The Palace of Versailles boasts 64,110 meters square of floor area and has 2.24 hectares of roofs. In the palace alone, there are 3,000 rooms, 121 fireplaces, 50 staircases, and 2,068 windows. In 1684, Louis XIV asked for the construction of the Grand Gallery, which today is called the Hall of Mirrors, 75 meters long, 11 meters wide, and 357 mirrors. More than 100 years after him, Louis-Philippe took up the challenge of grandeur and asked for the construction of a gallery that he wanted to be even larger and more majestic. In 1837, he inaugurated the Gallery of Great Battles, 119 meters long and 14 meters wide. 2 kings, 2 eras, 2 styles, the choice is yours. But enough about galleries. At the palace, you will also find the Royal Opera House, inaugurated in 1770. The Opera House was used 40 times to host performances between 1770 and 1789, and it still serves today. In 2019, 100 events were scheduled. The opera is a staggering sight. In the 18th century, 500 candles were needed to light a single show. Considering 500 grams of wax cost the equivalent of a day's wages, you'd certainly think twice before neglecting to put out the lights. A few meters from the opera is the palace's tallest building, the Royal Chapel, standing at a height of 42 meters. Let's take a step back. Today, the palace is surrounded by 77 hectares of gardens, composed of 16 groves leading to the Grand Canal, which covers an area of 23 hectares, 1,675 meters long and 1,073 meters wide. Get your walking shoes and your bikes, the 5.7 kilometers along the canal are waiting for you. Not far from the palace, the orangery covers an area of 5,275 meters square. During the colder months, it houses 1,600 trees. Inside, it reaches a height of 12.5 meters beneath the vault. Plenty of space, even enough to accommodate palm trees. A few steps away, the Lake of the Swiss Guard covers 14 hectares, the equivalent of 20 football pitches. From the Royal Gate to the Royal Star, the perspective stretches out over 3.4 kilometers. You think that's big? Consider this. Today, the palace is surrounded by the groves, the park covering 432 hectares, and the Trianon estate. All in all, we are talking of 660 hectares. But under Louis XIV's reign, we were talking about the Little Park, 2,000 hectares, larger than our current park, and the Great Park, which then stretched over nearly 10,000 hectares. And speaking of gardens, did you know that the fountains are fed by 35 kilometers of pipes, 80% of which are 3 centuries old? Let's now leave the palace and head over to Trianon. Less than 3 kilometers from the palace, the estate of Trianon covers 96 hectares and is divided into 3 locations: the Grand Trianon, the Petit Trianon, and the Queen's Hamlet. In the gardens of Trianon, the French garden covers 2.32 hectares, which is relatively small, however, when compared with the 14 hectares of the English garden. Built in 1687, the Grand Trianon covers an area of 8,527 meters square and has 535 rooms. The Petit Trianon has a surface area of 2,013 meters square, spread out across 158 rooms. Now, let's have a look at the collections of the Museum of Versailles. Hang on tight, let's go. The collections of the Palace of Versailles contain 84,069 works. These include 6,924 paintings, of which 6,207 are on independent substrats. Some are well-known works, such as Napoleon at the St. Bernard Pass, and some even more like Marie Antoinette, Queen of France, and Louis XIV's King of France. The smallest painting in the collections measures 11 centimeters by 8 centimeters and depicts Rosalie Lamar, Duchess of Rivoli, Princess of Essling, painted by Louis Gouffier in 1799. The largest painting is displayed in the Africa rooms, taking of the Smile of Abdelkader by the Duke of Amali at Tagine, painted on canvas and measuring 4.8 meter high and 21.7 meter wide. Of course, there are more than paintings. 7,452 pieces of furniture, 156 clocks, 426 chandeliers, 29,434 graphic artworks, and 8,745 art objects. The palace also has 3,741 sculptures, inside, such as the bust of the Sun King, and outside, such as the abduction of Proserpina. The Palace of Versailles is today a public establishment supervised by the French Ministry of Culture. In 2018, 1,089 people worked at the palace, including 814 permanent staff. They include 15 curators, 60 gardeners, and 500 members of security staff. A little more than 8 million visitors passed through the palace gates in 2018. How about you?
I felt like it just spit out a lot of numbers and information. It's kind of a shame that I can't really visualize what hectares are in relation to, like, acres or something like that to us. But there was one part where she was like referring to something like a pool to like soccer fields or football fields, of how many it would take to cover it. I think it was maybe around here. But yeah, that one blew my mind of how many it took to cover that one of the small areas there. But yeah, again, it's just massive. And I was interested when I found out that the Opera House is still used to this day as an opera house, which I think was pretty cool, instead of everything just being like a huge exhibit. But yeah, let's see. And that's pretty much all I have today.
A hectare is about half of an acre.
Okay. Okay.
So the numbers that you're seeing, just divide them in half, and that's how many acres. So, I mean, even at 8,000 hectares, that's still 4,000 acres.
Yeah. That's a lot. And then she
the
kept
thing I really liked was the fact that she said that they're still using the original plumbing.
Yeah.
From the 1700s. I mean, most houses around here, the plumbing that they've used in the 1900s have been replaced.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that they're still using the original plumbing from the 1700s is just amazing to think about.
Yeah. I do wonder how many like renovations they did, or if they like disrupted any of the original parts of like the plumbing or the building or walls or anything really. And then I also wonder what, because they kept zooming out and zooming out of all these different parts of Versailles. And I just wonder what else they're doing with all of those other buildings and everything like that. But yeah, it just kept zooming out. I did like the kind of geographic visual that they had. Was it in this one? Maybe it was in the video before, kind of how far it is from the main part of Paris, for sure. But yeah, so I think that's enough monuments for these past couple conversation hours. I knew I put this because I was going to forget. Next Thursday, we have a different passport event, which you should definitely go to if you don't have class. It's the one where we're talking to Nelson Mandela's prison guard and one of the inmates in his prisons. Yeah, here it is. It starts at 11 until 12:30. So I was just gonna say that I probably will come to French hour late next week. Yeah, here it is. Memories of Robben Island, conversations with a former prisoner and Nelson Mandela's prison guard. So yeah, that's what I was just gonna say, that I'll just come late to conversation hour. It doesn't end until 12:30. But yeah, cool. Any other thoughts? I will definitely look at what's going on in Notre Dame now. I do wonder that. I might actually look that up now.
Have you had a chance to look up any of the engineers?
Which one?
The engineers, any of the engineers, French engineers? I know you said you were gonna do some research of your own on that, but I don't know if you had any time.
I honestly totally forgot about it over spring break. I know I wanted to look into the the ones with the Eiffel Tower, and there's definitely another one. The nice thing is I can look back at my PowerPoints and check that out. And that's kind of partly why I'm looking up Notre Dame right now, so that I don't forget. Let's see, this one is from 2020. Rebuilt announcement, melted scaffolding clearly. The one that broke my heart was that black, I forgot what the word for it was, part that just kind of completely fell down and was destroyed as it was being burned. That was a really sad shot. Let's see, reached a turning point. Man, that's so sad. Spire, there we go, that's what I was thinking of. Let's see. Some 40,000 metal tubes. Man, all right, tell me what's going on now. All right, wow. Wow, it looks a lot bigger when you see pictures like this. See how it's doing. Wow. Oh, that's cool. Eiffel Tower right there. Okay, sorry, I'm skimming through these. I'm seeing if it's getting me. Notre Dame is saved. It looks like if this was in the fall of 2020, it still looked like this. I assume like they're not letting visitors in just yet. Yeah, November 2020. Nope, that looks like all of that. Huh. Rebuilt to its original form, bringing to a close the heated controversy. Contemporary touch and rebuild. I can see why people would get upset over that, putting a contemporary spin over it. Ah, here we go. President has vowed to have Notre Dame rebuilt in 5 years by 2024. Oh, I didn't know that. The city of Paris is slated to host the Olympic Summer Games. Uh-oh, though some architects have warned that such a massive project could take much longer. Wow. All right, so still in progress. That's crazy. But I guess it's so delicate and you're using so much modern equipment that's kind of tricky to like navigate around, I imagine.
They've also got I guess they would have to take out, since it's wood structure, they'd have to take out anything that's damaged to a point that they couldn't build off of it, so that any boards that are left in there structurally that's holding anything up that are burnt like more than 20% gone, they actually have to take all that out and put in new structure in that area too. Yeah. So they have to do more tear down before they can actually build on it, which is probably why engineers are going to say that it's going to take longer, because you have to get a starting point to build off of.
So true. Just make sure that foundation is super set and super sturdy, especially if you're going to put new material on top of old material. Because in that video, it looked like when the fire started, it said it was in the attic, right? So I guess it took out a lot of the top part of it instead of the bottom layer of the cathedral. So yeah, that's crazy. This is the front side, or the back side of the front. And like I said, it's cool to see the side of it, just because it's more than just this front two pillars. And it's also very different structure, I guess, from what you would think if you just looked at it straight on. But yeah, all right, that's what it looks like now. And I wonder, especially with COVID, how construction is going. Oh, all right, we see masks. Makes sense.
COVID has stopped quite a few major constructions.
Yep, I remember the one in Dubai that you were talking about. that would have been finished pretty soon, if not now, if it wasn't for COVID. Yeah, wow, crazy. This is the French culture minister. Well, anyways, kind of sad to look at. All right. Any last thoughts or recommendations for another time, besides me doing my homework on archetypes?
No, that's pretty much it.
Cool. All right. Well, if you need me to send a reminder for next week, I probably might forget that that event is gonna run until 12:30. But yeah, I'll be here for a little bit next week.
I'll probably join in on that, but that's my lunch break is from 11 to 12. So
Oh, okay.
I'll probably be at that with my camera off eating.
That's totally fine. That's a good thing to eat your lunch too, maybe. But yeah, I'm excited. That's gonna also be with another school as well, so it's not just Davidson. So it's a pretty big event. But yeah, thanks for coming by. I wasn't sure with your new classes and schedule if this time was still good for people. Noon, I think it's a lot of people's lunch break. But off-topic question. Me and Kaylin didn't go to the last international club meeting. Did you happen to go with that?
I don't think I was at the last one either.
Okay, because I've had people ask me when's the next one, and I have no idea what even happened in the last one. So whenever I find that out, I'll let you know about that too. Because I think about that on Thursdays, and I wonder if it's supposed to be today or not. But all right, so merci. I will see you next weekend or next week. Bye.